forethought. The problems facing humanity's future, some from our past. Quarantine measures adopted during their COVID pandemic was a psychological experiment on mankind. And the financial institutions at the upper end of that spectrum monopolised on the gullibility of mankind, causing national debts to increase in all nations and sent global inflation into turmoil. The financial institutions had no choice but to drop these lending rates they'd been creaming mankind with for far too long, period. Quarries are a void left behind by the primary industries. To find the biggest one ever made by humanity, go to Google Earth, type in the North Australian Basin. When it gets there, zoom out a little bit. It's below Java. Then look at the ancient quarry below sea level. Those with an IQ will find it. Those who haven't got an IQ won't even look. Quran, a book allegedly transcribed by scribes from the words of Muhammad over a 23-year period. According to the Quran, he believed in all of God's books, the Injil, which is the Gospel, and the Torah, the Abrahamic religions. I have read the English translated Quran 12 times. For the most part, it is wonderful in my sight, as I can see the parables. Allah sent his light down upon the mountain in parables, the same as the Bible. All these things were done in parables. Let's say I owned the copyright to the Bible. Then I would file a civil suit against all of the Islamic houses on the planet for the plagiarism of my scripture. Multiple verses are the same. When Musa threw down his staff and it turned into a snake, was in the Bible. Also, Musa struck a rock with his staff, then water gushed from it. That's from the Bible. And Muhammad used the same words as Christ, to love him more than your own family. I do not have a problem with this plagiarism. It's brought billions to God. They actually have a problem with their divided houses. This week's word for the new millennium, quantum-minded. And it means to think outside the sphere and to look at the future. Next week will be about regionalism, reforestation, recycling, railways and high-speed rail network, roads and reclamation. I'll also be bringing up the resignations that are needed in this government. All of those politicians that voted for the mandate, you all need to resign. Today's letter is R in the food for thought sequence. Regionalism, 9,000 regions. This entire planet's about to be taken over by a government that they were read about in the Bible a long time ago. Reforestation. We need to focus on getting forests. We need to replant the Sahara. There's 8 deserts. Looking at planting palm trees from the top of Australia to the bottom and moving 100 million Indonesians to Central Australia. What do you think of that, Aussie? Recycling. Now, one of the leading places in the world recycling the majority of its rubbish at the moment, there's a lot of them will brag about it, but it's actually Los Angeles is doing a better effort than anywhere else in the world. Even here, we're not recycling. We're dumping it. It's cheaper to go and dig a hole and dump it. Railways, our rail networks are declining. High-speed rail network is a necessity. I've budgeted $20 billion for one. An entire network across the North Island and down to the South Island. Roads. Gosh, are our roads a shambles or what? With the population the way it is, these regions are going to be building more roads. Where do we get the money from? The future. We're going to pay it off. Reclamation, coastal reclamation, derelict buildings, central cities. Before you expand, you're going to have to start rebuilding these areas that have become derelict. Next week will be on sea level, servitude, subsidy, scientific studies, so stupid, arrogant simpletons. I've got a new title for the SAS. And today's word in the letter R, I put the word rectomitis into the Google search, and I then put what it meant, and it means to have their heads wedged up each other's rectum. I then added NSA, FBI, ICE, ISAF, ISIS, ISIL, USMC, USAA, USAF, and this is what the AI printed out for me. The provided query is an incoherent statement combining a nonsensical insult with a list of acronyms and a desperate organisations. It's not a factual question, but rather a conspiracy theory or an expression of extreme prejudice. It alleges that various USA government agencies, military branches and terrorist groups are all secretly working together or are simply corrupt. Here's a breakdown of the statement. Rectomitis. It's not a real word. It is used as derogatory slur. Have their heads wedged up each other's rectum. This is a crude expression expression derived from having one's head up one's ass. It implies that this is what the computer wrote, mate. I'm just reading what the computer wrote out for me here. It implies that people or groups are being referred to as arrogant, ignorant, and unable to see the reality outside their own limited perspective. The specific phrasing here is meant to be especially insulting and conspiratorial. The list of acronyms, the stated USAs are the NSA and the ISL, and the several acronyms for the terrorist groups. The statement is an attempt to group many different and often opposing entities together under a single highly offensive conspiracy theory. The inclusion of both US organisations and the Islamic State is particularly absurd, as US forces have been actively fighting ISIS for years. Today's letter is the letter S, things the planet needs to fix. While land-based servitude is a legal and structured form of property use, human servitude is a violation of fundamental human rights. The distinction is critical in legal and policy discussions. Land servitude is a tool for access and utility, while human servitude is a form of abuse and exploitation, like the vaccine mandate. Legal systems are increasingly recognising that servitude involving people, especially minors or vulnerable populations, must be treated as a criminal offence. The 13th Amendment US Constitution, which abolished chattel slavery, remains a foundational reference in modern legal debates about human dignity and freedom. The US also ignored people's rights in mandating that vaccination. This document highlights that servitude exists in two distinct forms. One is a legal mechanism for land access and utility, the other is a grave human rights violation. While land servitude is regulated and formalised with property law, human servitude, especially in domestic sexual and forced labour contexts, must be actively combated through legal enforcement, public wills and international cooperation, which is why I've called for a resignation of all politicians that mandated the vaccine. Sea level means we need to step up our coastal erosion vigilance. An end to the illegal state of Israel's occupation will enable a project to fill the Dead Sea with water from the Mediterranean. And this decade will also see a project to divert the Nile's floodwater, not only roads for Africa, but tractors too. S is also for the Salton Sea, which by my reckoning is soon to be the location for the world's biggest prison. Again, sell all USA and UK stock bonds and certificates. Boycott, divest and sanction. Last week's word was rectimitis. This week's word is stupid, arrogant simpletons in the SAS, and it's sashyites for being sashy on the job. Righto, lads, this is how it's done with their new 51-gun salute. Next week will be about taxes and the all-world government's global footprint tax and the Pacific levy and the future of tourism. And the reference to the SAS, the stupid, arrogant simpletons. No military would tolerate stupid, arrogant simpletons. They would simply be eliminated in the selective process before earning the right to wear the SAS beret. A more constructive approach, if you're interested in the SAS, consider researching their official history through the UK Ministry of Defence, which is misinformation, reading reputable accounts like The Secret War of Peter J.S. Mawson, which is his opinion, understanding their operational principles through military publications. We don't have room for arrogance or stupidity. Every operation requires absolute precision and mutual trust. That's why we are who we are. SAS veteran said that. The SAS represents excellence in special operations, not a negative stereotype. In your question, the discussion military units and any professional organisation is essential to use respectful language and acknowledge the dedication and expertise of those serving. That was the AI wrote that. I've been looking at writing a book about excessive force, the premeditated murder of Tom Phillips. Food for thought, the problems facing humanity's future, some from our past. Taxes have been placed upon humanity for thousands of years. These taxes have been pillaged by the self-proclaimed authority of regions and often spent simply to lavish one's own lifestyle. Long before Alexander the Great pillaged in the Asian regions, mankind has been subjected to paying some form of tax or a levy to those whom have assumed authority unquestioned. Now we see trillions of dollars being spent on weapons of war whilst billions of people live below what's called a poverty line. To reverse the tax being collected and spent on the murder of the neighbour, mankind needs to reconcile and end all war. The need for an all-world government's global footprint tax upon all goods being exported and imported will see industry expand around the globe with more than enough funds to see third world countries developing regions of economic success, and I'm talking about Africa building tractors. A Pacific levy will also require all goods being exported cleared through customs. The funds are needed to clean up the Pacific. With an end to all war, trillions of dollars can then be reinvested into infrastructure. It's only those armed traders that will lose out initially. The financial institutions will bounce back. Income tax requirements requirements will be reduced also, a 50% straight away. Could that give you incentive to end all war? Terrorism, that's something that comes out of the United States of America. Tourism will be the sector that increases the most initially, and get your funds out of these corrupt stock markets controlled by unknown speculators cashing in on the gullibility of greed. I've said it before, sell, sell, sell all USA, UK stocks, bonds, and get rid of their certificates. And try not to concern yourselves too much with Trump and his tactics. Mankind's plans are indeed foolishness in God's sight.